11 things. Fill in the missing letters of the basic needs of 11 things. So this is what we saw the other time. So the answer is O for the first one. This is food. Food. And the second one, we removed the T and it has been placed there. So water. Water. The third one, I wasn't there and it has been placed there. So A. A-I-R. A. Home. Home. So M was removed. It wasn't there. So it has been placed there. So H-O-M-E. Home. So these are the basic needs of 11 things. We have food, water, air, and home. So these are the basic things, needs of 11 things. Now today's topic is difference between living things and non-living things. Difference between living things and non-living things. Good. Now let's start our lesson. Before we start the lesson, let us look at our lesson objectives. Lesson objectives. At the end of the lesson, you will be able to 1. Mention 3 differences between living things and non-living things. Mention 3 differences between living things and non-living things. Good. So this is our objective for today's lesson. Let's look at the introduction of this lesson. Now let's look at the picture on our screen. Now say what you can see in the picture on our screen. Say what you see in the picture. Now let's look at it. Now we have 2 boys in a canoe. We have a man catching fish. We have a dog, 2 houses, a bird flying in the sky. We have a goat eating weeds. We have trees. One is here. We have 2 trees. Another one and another one here. We have a bird on the tree. A tree is here. We have a bicycle and a duck on the water. We have another house. We have flowers at the back of the house and in front. We have another goat standing there. And we have a hen and chicks. And we have a cock also eating. We have a river. The man is catching fish and a fish line. So these are the things that we can see in the picture. Yes. All that we see in the picture are living and non-living things. All that we see in the picture are living and non-living things. So we can see the it's. Now let's continue. Now let's pick out all the living things in this environment. Let's pick all the living things in this environment. Now let's look at it. We have 2 boys. They are living things. We have a man. The fish is also a living thing. The dog is a living thing. Cow is also a living thing. The bird flying is a living thing. The tree, one is here. We have 2, another one and 2, and we have another tree. We have a bird on a tree. We have a duck, a cock, hen and chicks, and then cow. We have flowers and weeds. We have some weeds too here. So these are the living things we can pick from this environment. Now let's look at them one after the other. Now we have a man and the fish. They are living things. We have the boys. So the man and the boys are human beings. So human beings are living things. Human beings are living things. Good. So animals are living things. Animals are living things. And we saw in the environment that we saw a dog. So a dog is an animal and a dog is a living thing. We have duck. We saw the duck, and duck is an animal and it is a living thing. We saw the fish, the man catching the fish. The fish is an animal and it is what? A living thing. So we have dog, duck, and fish. They are animals and they are living things. Let's look at some animals too. We saw the cock. We have hen and chicks, goats. They are all animals and they are living things. We also saw goats eating. We have the bird standing on a tree. We have the butterfly flying. So goats, bird, butterfly, they are animals and they are living things. They are what? They are living things. Good. Now let's continue our lesson. Now we saw in the environment that plants are living things. So we have flower plants, we have the tree, and then coconut tree. They are all living things. So plants are living things. So let's continue. Now let's pick out all the non-living things in this environment. Let's pick out all the non-living things in this environment. We have the canoe, we have the paddle, the chair that the man is sitting on is non-living thing. We have the fishing line, we have the cap that the man is wearing. The boys are also wearing the cap. We have a house and the river. We have bicycle. Good. And these are non-living things we can identify in this environment. Now let's pick them one after the other. Good. So we saw that the house was in the environment, and house is non-living thing. Chair is a non-living thing. Canoe is also non-living thing. The river is a non-living thing. Fishing line is a non-living thing. And then the bicycle is a non-living thing. So river, fishing line, bicycle are all living things. They are non-living things. We also saw a paddle that the boys were holding, the hats that the man was wearing, and then the cap that the boys were wearing. So paddle, hats, and cap are all non-living things. They are non-living things. So the question says, what are the differences between living and non-living things. So we will look at difference between living and non-living things. Difference between living and non-living things. So we have talked about living things and non-living things. What are the differences between them? Now let's start the differences. Now living things eat. Living things eat. Non-living things do not eat. So let's look at the boy and the girl. What are they doing? They are eating. They are eating. So living things eat, whilst non-living things do not eat. This house here does not eat. The house does not eat. But human beings, we eat. That is the first one. The second one, let's continue. The first one, you can see a woman also eating, and a cow eating weeds, and a squirrel also eating. Yes, so living things eat. So we have human being and animals. They are living things and they eat. Whilst non-living things do not eat. So non-living things do not eat. Non-living things do not eat. So we can see on our screen, chair, house, and ball, they don't eat. So non-living things do not eat. So the chair, as it is on our screen, the house, the ball do not eat, and they are non-living things. Now, living things move on their own. Living things move on their own. Non-living things do not move on their own. Now you can see the dog running. The dog is an animal and it is living thing and it moves. Now look at this house. It does not move on its own. So living things move on their own. Non-living things do not move on their own. Living things move on their own. Now let's look at the living things, the animals and human beings. Now butterflies, they fly. Dog walk. This dog is walking. It can also run. Let's look at the bird flying in the sky. And the boy also walking. The ant is crawling on the floor. So living things move on their own. They move on their own. Good. Living things move on their own. Now let's look at plants. Let's look at this plant. It is moving towards the sun. It is moving towards the sun. So plants moves towards the sun. Plants move towards the sun. This plant is moving. As you can see the sun in the sky. So plants also move on their own, and they are living things. Non-living things do not move on their own. So let's look at this chair. The chair will not move on their own unless human beings move it. Human beings move it to one place, from one place to the other, to sit on it. Now this house cannot move on its own. Cannot move. And the ball also cannot move on its own unless somebody moves it. If you move it, you can play with it. So when you take it and put it at one side, yes, it has been moved by somebody. So living things do not move on their own. Non-living things do not move on their own. Let's look at this car. You will see the car moving unless somebody drives it. When you put petrol in it, you can drive it from one place to the other. Can move the car. So the car moves by somebody. The same thing applies to the fan. You can switch it on and it moves, but it cannot move on its own. When you put it in the plug and you switch it on, it will be moving. Somebody did it. The same thing applies to the bicycle. Unless somebody paddles it to one place, from one place to the other, it cannot move on its own. So non-living things do not move on their own. Good. Now living things grow. Non-living things do not grow. Living things grow. Non-living things do not grow. Let's look at the pictures on our screen. Now this is a baby. The baby was stand, and it will grow from this stage up to the last stage as an old man. Now when you eat, you grow. So human beings grow. Now let's look at this house. It will be there for a long time. It will not grow. So non-living things do not grow, but living things grow. Let's look at the boy. He was a small boy. Look at it. He will stand and start running. The same thing applies to these cats. Small cats growing, 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 and now a big cat. So living things grow. Living things grow. Let's look at this plant. Now it was a seed in the soil. Yes, this is a seed and it's growing, growing, and let's look at how it is now. So living things grow. So plants are living things and they grow. Non-living things do not grow. This chair, the house, and the ball, they do not grow. Good. This chair, house, and the ball, they will be there and they will remain the same. So non-living things do not grow. Living things reproduce. Living things reproduce. Non-living things do not reproduce. Non-living things do not reproduce. Let's look at the cow. Yes. Let's look at it. And this house cannot reproduce. So we see the cow standing there with the baby. The cow is a living thing and it has its baby. Good. Let's look at the hen and chicks. Let's look at it. And the dog and the baby and the woman and its baby. So living things reproduce. Living things reproduce. Now living things do not reproduce. Let's look at this chair. It will be there alone. It won't get any baby. Let's look at the house. It will be there for a long time. No baby. Let's look at the ball. Also no baby. So chair, house, ball are non-living things and they do not reproduce. They do not reproduce. Good. Now you have done very, very well. Now let's come to the summary of the difference between living things and non-living things. Summary between living things, difference between living things and non-living things. Good. Living things do all the following, but non-living things do not. So living things eat. Living things eat. Living things move. Living things grow. Living things reproduce. That is, they give birth. Reproduce means give birth. So they eat, they move, they grow, and they reproduce. They give birth. Good. Now let's test ourselves. Let's test ourselves on difference between living things and non-living things. Living things and non-living things. The differences. Good. Now learners, circle all the living things below. Circle all the living things below. So we have a chair, number 1. We have 2, a baby. Number 3, an animal squirrel. We have a ball and a man sitting on a horse. Number 6, a dog and a baby. 7, a television. And 8, a plant. So which ones are living things? So let's do it. So we have the baby, number 2. We have the squirrel, number 3. And then we have a man sitting on the horse. Yes, dog. The dog's there. And then the plants. So these are living things. These are living things. Good. Now, before we go, let us look at our homework on the differences between living and non-living things. Between living and non-living things. And the question says, fill in the missing letters of the following things done by living things. Fill in the missing letters of the following things done by living things. Now, the first one, the second, the third, and fourth one. So I will give you some minutes to copy the homework in your books. So copy the homework in your books. 1 minute. 1 minute. Next time. Until then, bye-bye.